couple people, so I'm assuming they'll be trickling in, so apologies on the tardy start. Just would rather have a couple more people in. It's usually hard, 8 a.m. 8 a.m. starts can be a little tricky at times. So thanks so much for being here. We've got some familiar faces, which is great, and some new faces. So welcome back to those of you who have been to our office, and a very warm welcome to those of you who are new. We really, I just want to give you guys thanks for being here this morning. 3 hours of your week is a huge time investment, and we sincerely appreciate that. We understand there are a lot of different places that you could be this morning. It could be meeting with your people, it could be on sales calls, you could be making plans for Q3 and beyond. So thanks so much for being here, and really give you guys a pat on the back for wanting to grow and get better in the sales arena, as well as a sales leader, whether you are a solo entrepreneur or you've got a big team going. We're going to try to make sure that we have that kind of umbrella approach that you all, there's going to be some takeaways and some strategies that you can walk away with and implement immediately. A lot of you know Sandler, so that's good, and hopefully you're going to learn some new things or hear some refreshers that you say, gosh, I did that once upon a time and I need to get back in doing that, or maybe you're going to hear something you've never heard before. And we would just encourage you, just like anything else, it's application, right? This is the safe zone, so I would encourage you, share your wins, share your losses, because really it gets harder once you leave these doors. That's where the real work comes in. So we're going to have fun. It's very much facilitation. We are not going to just be lecturing at you all morning. We want to hear what's going on. I sent most of you a survey and asked for some things that you in particular wanted to hear about. So Rich is going to hit on those. And we tried to tailor it a little bit, even though some of them we got yesterday. But we do have a great lineup of curriculum that we've got here for you today. So just as far as the agenda goes, we're going to go 3 hours straight. We're not going to take any breaks or anything like that, but help yourself, water, coffee, soda, tea. You did pass the restrooms on the way in, so that's out the door and to rights. So feel free to go ahead and do that. You don't have to raise your hand or whatever. As far as cell phones go, just make sure those are turned off, just as courtesy of the other people in the room and your trainer. If you have to take a call, we obviously understand. There is that room right out this door here to the right. You can go and close that. That's our think room, so feel free to do that if you do need to take a call. We understand. Just a couple last things. Many of you are aware, so we've got little booklets in front of you. They're blank for a reason. We do that because everybody's got different things that they need to learn, and everybody's a different learner, so you really are going to put in there what's critical to you as a leader and a salesperson. If you turn on the back, there's a hot sheet. So the hot sheet, many of you have seen these, some of them of you it's new. So we really look at that as these are your commitments. So things that you're 10 out of 10 unconditionally committed to doing. So you're going to walk away and you're going to figure out, you know what, this afternoon I'm going to try this, or I'm going to set a meeting with my people for next week. Like, make it that kind of SMART acronym so it's specific and measurable but realistic. Don't go too crazy, or we all know that we'll just set ourselves up for failure and disappointment. So that's what the hot sheets are. And as Bill and Rich are training with you, they'll kind of walk you through, hey, maybe now's a good time to write that. With that, I would again just encourage you guys to raise your hand if you've got something that doesn't make sense or doesn't click or you need to push back on. I think Rich, you'll kind of go into that a little bit. Rich Austin is going to kick us off this morning, cover the sales portion of it, and then Bill's going to segue into the sales leadership part of it. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm Lindsay, the VP of Sales and Marketing here. Ashley is our administrative and marketing assistant, so if you need anything, just give us a wave. So thanks again, guys. Rich?
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Let's try this again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
There we go. Now we're into it, right? So a couple of things that I wanted to mention, and I know some of you have experienced this before. You've been in our building before, you've seen our methodology, but for those of you that haven't, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of who we are and what we do. So who we are, we're a business consulting firm. We specialize in sales training and sales management consulting. Who we work with? We work with CEOs, presidents, business owners, partners, sales leaders, like yourselves and your peers who are in this room. And these are typically companies and organizations that are highly profitable. They're very healthy, they've got great people, but they've got frustration around sales for one reason or another. And so we help them build a methodology for sales that's steeped in psychology. And there are two main objectives that this methodology is going to bring forth. Number one is to build equal business stature with the folks that are selling and the folks that are buying. And so what we see is there's a disproportionate amount of leverage that buyers typically have, and so our process is going to help the sellers build equal business stature or a human-to-human, peer-to-peer relationship. So that's one output. And the second output is getting to the truth as quickly as humanly possible. So let's figure out, are we a good business fit or are we not? Because if we're not, let's cut bait and invest our time somewhere else. Just to share a statistic with you, 70%, Harvard Business Review did a study, and what they found was the average salesperson is spending 70% of their time in a follow-up mode. And less than 10% of the people that they're following up with will ever do business with them. So if you're a numbers person, if you want to jot that down, I'm going to ask you in a little bit to analyze how much time do your salespeople spend following up on opportunities. They really have no chance of closing, and so 70%. Right? A couple of other things that I wanted to share with you before we get too far into today. We did ask you to fill out a survey, and so we appreciate those of you that have done that. And so here's what we found with the top 5 frustrations of the folks in this room. Number one, frustrated by prospects that stall the process and say that they want to think it over. So think it overs are certainly one of those, and that would lend to that 70% number. Proposals being shopped around as prospective clients look for a lower price, and so people taking our intellectual property or information and then sharing it with our competitors so that they can use it as leverage or as a stick to beat up folks to get a better price. Concern with long sales cycles and lack of process for predictable business development. So those are two different things, right? But one is certainly, what does our sales cycle look like? What does our process look like from soup to nuts? And why is it taking so long? And then the predictable business development forecasting model. Why do we find it so difficult and so tough for us to be able to predict what we're going to be able to close or what our people are going to be able to close over time? Welcome. Have not developed a success profile that clearly demonstrates the profile for high performance in every position in our company. And so you'll see this, we're a behavioral-based company. We believe in measuring behaviors and setting up key KPIs or key performance indicators based upon those behaviors for behavioral change. And so Bill's going to touch on that in the second half of this morning. And the last piece is we find ourselves having the same conversations over and over again with our people, but we're not seeing behavioral change and we're not sure why. And so how many times have we sat down on a weekly or bi-weekly debriefing session with some of our salespeople or our sales teams, and we find ourselves having the same conversations and we're literally banging our heads against the wall because it's not changing. So we're certainly not going to be able to address all of these in great detail today, but we're going to touch on all 5 of these for sure. A couple of other things that I wanted to share with you briefly. Bill and I are, I guess you could call us partners in crime in this business, and so we're responsible for going out there and selling. And when you're a partner in the business, that's great because it's something that's fancy and nice to put on a business card, but what it really means is you're a commissioned salesperson. We eat what we kill here. And so part of what we're going to talk about today is not just going to be theory or philosophy or methodology that we think works, or what we'll call the fairy tale world. We're going to be talking about real world and what does certainly work. Not only what we're doing, but what our clients are doing out there and where they're finding success. And so as part of that, what I'm going to ask you to do is recalibrate a little bit. Take some time this morning to be very purposeful about what you want to get out of today. And I'm going to ask you in a moment what your objective is, so put some thought into that, right? What is one objective that you could walk away with, or one aha that you could walk away with at 11:30 that would lead you to believe that this was time well spent? So become purposeful about what it is that you want to get from today, and whatever issues outside of business that you brought with you, I'm going to ask you to remove those and take this time to focus on you. Because here's what we see even with high performers. Most of us just don't take the time to invest in ourselves, our development, and our company because we're so worked up into business. We never really take a moment to step outside and work on the business itself. So as part of this recalibration, one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to avoid saying, I'm already doing that. Because we're going to share some behaviors, we're going to share some techniques with you, and the thought might creep into your mind, I got it, I understand this, I know it, intellectually, conceptually, I'm good to go. I'm going to ask you to resist that temptation because, as you probably know, in sales, they're often won or lost on the turn of a phrase or a nuance. And so consider what might be beneath the surface psychologically in some of these techniques that we're going to share with you today. Secondly, and this is probably more important, avoid saying, I could never do that. Our system and our methodology is inherently counterintuitive. It is deeply psychological, and oftentimes there's some reverse psychology that's used, and it cuts across our instincts. And so one of the things that I want to share with you about instincts, right, they don't always lead us down the right path. And the best, I guess, way that I could describe this for you, the best metaphor I could use is the martial arts. Does anybody study the martial arts whatsoever, or a student? No? Good. I always want to know who's got the capacity to karate chop me in the neck. So, good to hear. In martial arts, one of the first things they teach you how to do is they teach you how to fall. So when you think about instincts in our gut, right, when we're falling, when we're losing our balance, what do? Instinctually, without even thinking about it. How do we fall? Yeah, we put our arms out, we brace ourselves. Why do we do that? Okay, all right, we feel like we're going to brace our fall, we'll have some safety. What's the problem? What's the danger in throwing our arms out?
Break your wrist, break your arms.
Okay, so we're putting all that pressure, all that stress, all that momentum, all that weight onto one or two pressure points. And so what can we find as a net result of that? Broken wrists, broken arms, broken fingers, broken hands, things like this. And so one of the first things they teach us in the martial arts is roll. Stop, drop, and roll. So when you're losing your balance, take your momentum and roll with it. And you might have a bump or a bruise, but what you're certainly not going to have is a broken arm or a broken wrist. And so you get taught this, right? It's one of the first things they teach you how to do. And you say, all right, got it. I'm good. I'm set. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. And then the next 6 times you fall, what do? You stick your arms out, right? So I'm going to ask you to fight some of those theories that you have and some of those truths that you have about sales and leadership today that you feel are instinctual, because we're going to challenge those. And I want you to keep your mind open to it as we go through this. And so forget some of those things that you've held near and dear about sales and about leadership. We're going to ask you to commit to finding at least 2 or 3 items that you can immediately implement in your world by the time we leave today. Demand from us that we challenge you. And then once you've left, we want you to immerse yourself in what you learned today and the material that you're about to get. Because here's what we know, psychologically speaking. Over the next 3 weeks, you're going to forget between 80 and 90% of what you've learned. And so as Lindsay mentioned, on that hot sheet, when you get that aha moment that you want to remember, that you want to look back on 3 months from now, jot it down on the hot sheet, and that way you're going to have it at your fingertips. So last thing. I want to establish one rule for us today, and it's the BS rule. Now, BS is an abbreviation. Does anybody want to take a stab as to what it stands for? Mike? Feel like you might have an inkling.
I don't think so.
Okay, it's an abbreviation for bullshit. All right, that's what the abbreviation is. And so here's what I want to share with you. If you hear myself or Bill say something or suggest something or bring a philosophy or a methodology forward that you think won't work in your world or is just BS or happy horse you know what, then just let us know. Raise your hand and call it out. Because that's why we're here, right? We're here to talk about those challenges. We're here to talk about how this works in your world. Reality, not the fantasy world. And then secondly, if we hear something, and this is how the BS rule works, if we hear something from you that we believe is an excuse or is externalizing or is blaming others for lack of success, then we have the right to use the BS card as well. So are we okay with that? Sure, we are right with that. And so like Lindsay mentioned, we certainly want you to interact. It can't just be us up here talking at you. We have to do this together as we move through. So with that in mind, here's what I'm gonna ask you to do. Up here on the board, we see 4 different pieces of information, and so what I'd like to do is briefly go around the room. We can do this 30 seconds or less per individual, so you don't have to do a dissertation here, but here's what we're interested in. What's your name? What's your role? What's your company, if it's not obvious? What's one objective that you want to get from this morning? And the last thing is your favorite band. And not your favorite band of all time, your favorite guilty pleasure band. The one that you're dancing in the kitchen, in the shower to when they come on, that you hope nobody ever sees or knows about. That's what we're looking for. Armin, if you would.
Sure, my name is Armin Guderian. My role is Market Vice President at Conoco Minolta. I handle the Metro Chicagoland area. Objective, I've known Sandler for about 20 years now. I've known Bill for a long time, and he's really helped me for a lot of the principles I've used to help me get to the position I'm currently in. My favorite band of all time, or what I really like to sing along to, play guitar to, would be the Eagles.
Okay.
Love the Eagles.
Love the Eagles. All right, fantastic. Any guilty pleasure bands?
Sometimes I break out a pretty good Elvis. I don't know if it's
Okay, all right, that's what we're looking for. Good. The King. Thanks, Armin. Nikki.
My name's Nikki Anderson. I'm the president of the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce. My objective is to be a more effective manager for my sales team. They've had the pleasure of working with you guys, and I need to be connected a little bit more with them. So whether it's the language, or just a clear understanding like the BS, I'm interested in seeing how that works, because I'm right there right now with
Beautiful.
my salespeople. So
You're in the right
I
place.
want
Good.
to learn how to call that out effectively. Right?
Good.
My band would be Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Mm.
So.
Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yes, are they touring?
I don't know. Oh, they are not.
I'll let you know if I
Yeah,
find it. If it
yeah,
comes up
you
on my
know.
ticker.
Yep.
I may have them on my ticker. Good job.
John Fitzgibbon, I work with a company called Electa. We're an oncology company. We build radiation therapy machines. I first came here 8 years ago and met Bill. I can't believe it's been 8 years already. And I've had kind of a interesting 8 years at Electa, always in sales. Starting off with a sales management role for a specific product line, and it's evolved to today where I'm part of like a SEAL Team 6. There's 5 or 6 of us that support the rest of the sales organization. We fly around to the more complex deals anywhere pretty much in North America, sometimes globally. My objective is just to re-immerse myself. It's probably been 2 years since I've been here, to re-immerse myself first into this process, because it's something that I still use a lot, but not as effectively as I did when I was coming here regularly. My band stole my band, the Eagles. My guilty pleasure band, the one that popped in my head, you said. Probably a flock of seagulls. It's the only one that popped into my head today, but that's probably better.
As long as it's a bird, you're listening to it. That's yeah, good job. Thank you. And so Sandler, and then here's what we'll find, right? For folks that have worked with us in the past and have gone away for a little bit, it's like a foreign language. When you're not immersing yourself in it, it tends
It's
to
like a re-aha.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. So some ahas again. So look, it's new again. Good. Tabitha.
Hi, my name is Tabitha Cobb, and I am the Director of Operations for Smart Resources. We're a full-service search firm. And my objective is to make my teams a little bit more accountable, because I find that I am making excuses for them. And the reason that I decided to come here is because my boss, Tim Flood, who's the owner of the organization, has been through the SATLAS program, and he always talks about it. So let me come and see what it's all about.
Yep, dip your toe in the water a little bit. So accountability, that's one of those topics that we're certainly going to talk about today. We're going to examine it quite a bit. It's one of those buzzwords that we love to talk about, but is much harder to actually implement, and even harder to get our people to follow by. So we're definitely going to go there. Thanks for coming. Jennifer.
What about your band?
Oh, sorry.
Actually, mine is more of an artist, and it's Jill Scott.
Jill Scott.
Yes,
Okay, that's fine. Artist band.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Alvarez, and I own Refined Beauty. It's a salon in Naperville. My role is not just the owner, but the accountant, the bookkeeper, the inventory manager, and the cleaning lady. So I wear all the hats right now. My objective for being here today is to learn more about management and leadership, because I would like to add a staff. of people, and they need to learn how to take care of them and help them grow a business and a career. Band, I like Drake.
Drake. All right, good, some hip hop. I was waiting for it to come out. I was hoping I wasn't the only one. Yeah. Thanks for making me feel better. Mike.
My name is Mike Show. I manage the exterior division of Bradford & Kent Custom Remodeling. Bradford & Kent's been in business about 30 years. We opened the exterior division, which is primarily windows, siding replacement, exterior renovations about 3-4 years ago. I thought I had all the answers. Last year we increased business 60%. We rebranded ourselves, we did the proposal package, the presentation package. So we grew 60% last year. This year we are down 40%. So whatever I did last year is not working this year. That's why I'm here.
Okay. So building a repeatable process is
Yes.
something that you
Yeah,
can predict.
it is repeatable. It's not working this year for some reason.
For whatever reason, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, it's fallen off.
Yeah.
Good. We'll examine that, we'll take a look.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last but not least, Dana.
My name's Dana Drury, and I'm the area vice president for Conica Minolta in the Chicagoland area, and I've known Bill for 20 years. And when I first started with Sandler, I just got into management, and there were so many things I go back to, and I think of golden nuggets that have helped me throughout my career. And I think one of my personal goals that I put on my sheet this year was to better myself and strengthen myself. And I go back and examine things I do right, things I do wrong, and things I need to do a little different. So I like that, I want to commit to some things and do things a little different with myself.
Fantastic. Really good objectives from everybody here, and we do appreciate the fact that you took some time out to answer our questionnaire to give us a better sense of where to take today's program, because we customize it as much as we possibly can for you. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and move forward. And so I'm going to start today with a question, and this is an individual question. I just want you to take a couple of minutes at a table on your own to suss out your sales process. And so the question is this: how do your salespeople currently sell, and what process are they using? And so think of it this way: from the time that they've got their feet kicked up on their desk to the time where the check is deposited, what are the different steps that they must take in order to ensure a sale? So take a couple of moments, jot down high level all the steps that your sales team must go through in order for them to close a piece of business. And we'll give you about 2-3 minutes for this. So we're looking for the process, the steps that your team takes in order to close a piece of business, from soup to nuts. Couple more questions. Number one, what's your sales closing percentage? Bless you. So as an organization, as a team, what's your closing percentage? How many of the opportunities that you get and that they get actually turn into a piece of business from start to finish? What's that percentage look like in your organization? And if you don't know it, hazard a guess. Second question. At what point in your sales process do you face the most roadblocks, the biggest amount of challenges? Where does it break down? What are the 1, 2, 3 choke points in which we find the most amount of resistance, or we find our prospects going silent?
That could be two different things.
Go ahead.
Obviously, one, the sales rep could have happy ears, right?
Yep. And what's happy ears?
They thought they heard a yes, and it wasn't a yes.
Okay. So the prospect says something like, we think we might make a decision in the next 30 or 40
Sold.
days, and the salesperson hears, we're doing business right now, right? That's happy ears, good. So help me understand, give me some thoughts, as you're jotting your process down, as you're thinking about your closing percentages, and you're thinking about the different challenges that your team is facing, the different roadblocks that they're facing, the grenades that get blown up in the middle of the sales process. Give me some feedback here on what you're seeing. And Armin already pointed out one, which is important, and that's what? Having happy ears, right? So we thought we heard somebody say they were ready to do business and they weren't. Does that happen in any particular part of your process?
Typically, happens when you don't have an upfront contract. You just go in because you're trying to bond and report, and you think somebody likes you. They're buying from you because they like you.
Okay, so we go in, and our process is we're gonna win with personality and intuition. We don't have much of a plan, it's not much of a strategy, we're just gonna show up, we're gonna be charming, we're gonna be warm, we're gonna make people laugh, they'll fall in love with us, they'll do business with us, right? Okay, so that's one issue that gets treated. Good. Other thoughts, Nikki?
I have a lot going through my mind. When it comes to the roadblock, it's always price and value. So my takeaway when my staff says, well, they said, we're overpriced or they didn't understand the value, I look at my staff and I go, well, let's go back to square one. Because clearly there's something missing. If they don't understand why we price ourselves, perhaps in their mind, yeah. So that's where my frustration comes in. This shouldn't be an issue if your presentation or delivery or conversation is succinct.
Right. What does this indicate to us? It indicates it's a one-sided conversation. It may have been somebody showing up and dumping a bunch of information, and in that glazed over eye effect that our prospect has, we don't have a decision because there's just too much information and not enough about that. Good. Yeah.
Getting to the right people.
Okay.
And I'm in healthcare, and it's gotten increasingly difficult for us, or my team, to really get to the right person. There'll be some people that'll tell them what they want to hear. Oh yeah, you're in good shape and looking good for the next 30 days, even though they haven't even gotten a contract with us yet. They told us exactly what the scope of the project's going to be. So experience should dictate that you shouldn't be forecasting that.
Okay.
Because you're not talking to the right people.
You're not talking to the right people.
Right.
You're not getting in front of the decision makers, the people that have the clout to be able to make the decisions, the capacity to
Yeah.
be able to do
They're not
so.
asking the people they're talking to who the right people are.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to be offensive, like, well, who signs the contract? When-
I don't want to go above their head.
Right,
Is a
right.
common
This
thing
guy
that
likes
we
me,
hear.
so he's
Sure.
gonna help me or she's gonna help me.
Yeah.
We actually took dollars off the table in the last 12 months. You'll love this story, Bill. And guess what happened? We basically would sell our stuff for anything to get the order. And even if we were gonna take a loss on the cost, and our sales went down. Seriously?
Yeah. It's amazing. The
You love that
psychology
one, right?
behind it.
You made my day. I figured I would.
How valuable is a free widget?
Yeah.
It's not very valuable, right? It doesn't
No,
have a lot of clout.
we have 100 examples in the last 12 months, and I wasn't a big proponent of the idea at the time. And I'm not running around telling people I told you so,
But this is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing. Thank you. Tabitha.
Ours is unrealistic expectations, not setting them when you go out to meet with the client. You know what our niche is, but yet you come back with a need for someone, a legal secretary with some type of specialty, but that's not what we do. So then you're expecting that to close. So now I've got recruiters internally trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Okay, makes some
Which just
sense.
won't close.
It's amazing how many of our problems, and I'll ask you this question, right? How many of your sales issues would go away if your team were able to develop a burgeoning, bursting at the seams pipeline that's so full that they spend their time constantly disqualifying versus qualifying? How many of our issues would go away? So that's the question I want you to ask yourself. How many of my issues would go away if that were the case? Because what I'm gonna ask you to do in a second is figure out how much are these sales issues costing you? And it's not just about dollars and cents. That's certainly something that we can measure. What can we not measure unless you're getting an EKG? Stress levels, right? Frustration, and how this is affecting you both on the field and off the field, and how this is affecting your conversations with your direct reports and your salespeople and your sales teams, because those are critical too. Jennifer?
I would say a challenge would be having already your current customer and adding more value to what they're already wanting from you.
Okay. So they typecast you, they put you in a box and say, this is what XYZ does, and having the ability and the skill and the proficiency, competency to be able to say, look, does it make sense for us to talk about the 7 other things that we do, but bringing that up in a way that's palatable for them, not in a way that's salesy or cheesy. Is that fair to say? Okay, because again, in our world, we don't want you to sound, look, act, be perceived like, smell like a salesperson. Because those are desperate, needy people who are out there to get a commission, right? And typically have a really hard time bonding with your executive level clients. We want you to look, sound, act, be perceived, smell like a legitimate business person, a respected business person, or we could just substitute that with human being, because that's who we're selling to after all. So that's critical. Mike?
Yes, there's several. The bulk of our leads for the first quarter of the year come from the local home shows, home garden shows we do. And unfortunately, that puts us in a commodity situation. There's 16 other people selling windows and siding at the same venues we're at.
Yep.
So our clients are walking down every alley, just making appointments with everybody. So we try to vet those appointments. We don't just take names and appointments, or names and numbers. We set appointments at the show. We try to vet them as best we can. But I'm not sure when my guys are going to the client's home, I get to reply to what you said, price is only an issue in the absence of value. We're not going to be the cheapest one walking these people's homes. We're trying to convince my salespeople of that. You have to create the value, and our presentation creates the value. Are they doing it in the home? I'm not with them, I don't know.
Okay. So our issue becomes, if price is the lowest common denominator, right? Who's going to win business in this room? Nobody, right? Do you want to be known as the lowest price offering in your space? You don't, right? We do command a premium for our products and for our services, and so we must compose ourselves and act likewise. There's no doubt about it. So that's an important piece. We're going to dive into that a little bit further. Dana?
I think qualifying the need and listening to them speak, not speak for them. And I think a lot of times is they assume by what they've been in the past, so they're not allowing them to do 70% of the time. So I think that's the frustrating part, and that's why you could get so much out of it, or you could add additional value if you're listening, refining the pain in the right areas, and asking those additional questions and seeing back each of them.
That's critical. It's absolutely critical, because our prospects do have a process in which they use to buy. And I'm about to share with you what that process looks like, but they won't share it with us unless they're speaking 70% of the time and we're speaking 30% of the time on a sales call.
And I think it's a confidence of being okay. It's okay to ask. I mean, it's okay to ask in the manner you ask things. It's just the way you do it and getting comfortable with doing it. I think a lot of people still feel like, you know, they're not, they're going back to that childhood to where they're not supposed to ask adults a certain amount of question or authority or different things like that. And that's, we try to remind them that it's hard.
77%, to your point, of our behavior, right, psychology tells us, is program behavior. In other words, we're going to behave very predictably given a certain set of circumstances. There's a stimulus and there's a response. And so how often do we see this? If you ever heard the phrase, it's not polite to talk about money. A lot of salespeople, and by a lot I mean over 90%, and we test for this, walk around going on sales calls uncomfortable talking about money. Now think about that. It's crazy, but it happens all the time. So that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit. Let's move on. There's a second question I want to ask you, and this one hopefully you can figure out as well. If you've never put some thought into it, I want you to think about this. How do your prospects buy? What's the process that they go through? You have steps on the sales process, but what are put yourself in your prospect's shoes. What steps must they go through to feel comfortable enough to give you money and give you trust? What do those steps look like? Salesperson's job, among many others, is to create an atmosphere, a culture or an environment in which their prospects feel comfortable sharing with them the truth. And in order to do that, you must have authenticity. You must have a genuine approach. How many of us in sales put on our suit of armor and our big smiles and our positive attitudes, and we walk in being somebody that we're not? And I'm not saying you in the room, and I'm certainly not saying some of your salespeople, but other company salespeople out there, right? How often do we see that? How often do we see disingenuous conversation? What I'm going to share with you next is a model that we know that exists, that's a default model for sales and for buying. And when we take a look at these two models, we've got the buyer on the left and we've got the salesperson on the right. And so if we distill sales down to its very essence, we can look at it in terms of there are 4 distinct steps. And in these 4 distinct steps, here's what we know. Number 1, our people are out there genuinely looking for interest. They're looking for folks that have some type of interest in what it is we do. Secondly, once we find somebody who's got some interest, we're going to ask them some questions, right? Figure out exactly what it is they need. And then we're going to put together a value-added presentation. And we're going to share with them the evidence that we believe they need in order to feel comfortable doing business with us. After we've done that, oftentimes the prospect doesn't necessarily say yes right away. They're either going to say no or the dreaded what? You need to think about it. You need to think about it, right? So I got to take it to the board, I got to take it to my financial planner, all these other issues. And in answering stalls and objections and overcoming objections, it finally leads to the 4th step, which is we're going to consistently follow up, right? That's the professional term that we use. We also talk about it as business stalking. So we're going to follow up with them consistently until they either tell us to take a hike or we just continue this process, and therein lies the 70% follow-up. The left side of the board, and your prospects do this, there's no doubt about it, but the question is, what level of sophistication is it? Because it doesn't matter whether it's a mom and pop, or whether it's a husband and wife, or whether it's a Fortune 100 company, they go through these 4 steps as well. And so the buyer's process, and look how these line up, by the way, right? The very first step is for them to mislead. Or if we want to be honest about it, it's lie. And there are 2 different types of lies. The first lie is I call into Dana, into her office, and I say, hey Dana, look, we sell some of this fancy sales training, and I understand that your organization might be struggling in some level. Should we set up a conversation? And what are the first words out of Dana's mouth? No, we're good, we're all set, thanks. Right, so the first type of lie is to get us to go away. It's a put up. But the second type of lie, which is the most dangerous type of lie, is, you know what, Rich? Great suggestion. Why don't you come on in, have a conversation. Why don't you tell us all the different things you can do, all your capabilities, and give us a needs analysis, and then share with us what your prescription might be to fix our ills. And when a salesperson hears that, back to happy ears, do we get excited?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Show up and throw up free consulting.
There's no doubt about it, right? We've got a great opportunity, and this is our ideal client. And so they're misleading. They go to the step 2. They're stealing our expertise. We're making a presentation, a value-added presentation. They're taking our intellectual property, right? For what commitment? What are they committing to when we're committing the time, the effort, the energy? An appointment. They're committing to a little bit of time, and they're getting all these different things in return. We've got clients that literally, it costs them $50,000 to put together specs and blueprints to give somebody a presentation, right? 10% closing rate, by the way. It's crazy how much this costs. And so think about the opportunity and the time cost and the money cost for your organization. The 3rd step is they mislead again. And so they say something like, we need to think about it, or we're going to take this to the board, right? And they're saying this because it gets us to go away. Well, I certainly understand that. That seems like a healthy decision-making process. Certainly I'll respect it. And we go away, right? And then they run into the fourth step, which is hide. They're going deep cover, we're chasing them, right? And where you may have seen this play out in the real world is, well, if you're a member of a health club, right, or a fitness center, or maybe you belong to a golf club, and you've got somebody selling insurance and somebody buying, and there's a conversation that's taken place, and then the two people are desperately trying to avoid one another, right, awkwardly, because they don't want that exchange. So that's where we see it all the time. And by the way, how long do you suppose this has been going on? One more time?
Forever.
Forever. And I don't want to make any assumptions, but to some degree, does this look familiar? Or is this one of those BS moments where richness doesn't happen?
Legit.
Yeah.
This is what we're living every day. And so it begs the question, why don't we do something else? Why don't our people, who we compensate highly, figure out a different way to go out there and close business and stop being so inefficient?
I think that they were so apt on listening to what the buyer says, that they take their lead, where they don't make their own leads in a lot of cases. So if that was the case, and you realize that early on, you should shut up and ask additional questions to them. Why do you want to meet with me? What is your process?
Yeah.
How does this look like? What's your time? All those type of things, but they still continue to talk because they're in front of that customer. And it's feeling good.
There's no doubt about it,
Yeah.
right? We're going to lean on what we're comfortable with, and what we're comfortable with is our stuff, talking about our products and our services and what we're comfortable with, rather than the unknown, which is asking questions, right? And again, if we have a bursting, burgeoning, busting at the seams pipeline, you're not going to go down these paths. And so therein lies the question, what are we doing to build that type of a model in our business? Let me show you another methodology, and this is our methodology for sales. And I'm going to spend about 2 minutes going through this, and I'm going to pass the baton to Bill, and he'll take us through the leadership piece, because this is not necessarily a sales training, but more of a sales management briefing, right? And so we can talk about this in another session, but these are the 7 steps that we'll take, and we'll help our clients build this methodology into their own sales process so it fits hand in glove. And there's a few more steps that we're going to have to go through, but it closes at an 80% clip. And so the very first step is bonding and rapport. And that's about building relationships. And it's not just, hey, we're both Cubs fans. Aren't we feeling close now? Shouldn't we be best friends because our kids play soccer, right? Those things are nice to bond over, but we've got to be a bit of an armchair psychologist. And so here we teach things like DISC, transactional analysis, primary sensory dominance, okay, not okay theory. And I'm not listing these off to sound smart or cool. It's just we must be able to speak to our prospects at the frequency at which they speak and learn. And if we don't do that, if we don't tailor and customize our approach to each individual, then we're not going to find true bonding and rapport. The average salesperson believes bonding and rapport is small talk. It's not. Number 2, upfront contracts. Building a mutual business agenda together. There's no better thing, there's no better tactic that we use in the CMO world to build equal business stature than having a set agenda that the salesperson and prospect agrees to at the beginning or outset of each meeting, because it ensures an outcome, it ensures that a decision's going to be made, it ensures that we're not going to have any interruptions. And so we've got to have the courage, though, to be able to assert and execute one of those. Number 3, pain, the reason to buy. And this is where the decision is typically truly made. People make buying decisions emotionally, they justify them intellectually. So if we think about that for a second, how many of us are distilling everything we're doing down to the intellectual? If we hear price, 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 that's the issue. If we just had a lower price, we would have won the business, then we know that our salesperson did not get the prospect emotionally involved. They missed the number 1 key performance indicator for success on the sales call, which is they must be emotionally involved. So pain is all about the motivation or reason to change. If we don't figure out what that is and we're presenting, then we're guessing like everybody else out there, and we will be commoditized. Budget, investment. It's not just about money. Once we've found pain, once we understand our prospects' reason to want to buy, we must now figure out how much money, how much time, and how much energy, so those are the 3 pieces, money, time, and energy, are they willing and able to part with in order to bring us on to help them get rid of the pain that they're experiencing. So it's not just about money, that's a big piece, but they have to be willing and able to part with the time and the energy as well in order to bring us out. Decision, the fifth step. It's about influencers and timing, and so who's going to influence the decision-making process? When does the decision need to be made? We have to understand this, and our salespeople must be proficient in asking questions to uncover the mystery of when and how and who influences if we're gonna be able to do business and differentiate ourselves. If we don't do that, we're missing out on one of the biggest indicators of success in sales. And in the remodeling business, which I was in for a while, Mike's business, I remember a $60,000 kitchen sale that I was literally writing up the contract to. And the husband and wife said, it's gonna take how long, 6 to 8 weeks for you to complete construction? We can't do that. We've got grandkids, we host parties. There's no way. This was after 3 separate meetings and about 10 hours combined of time that we had invested with one another. Had I asked one simple question the first 5 minutes of the first meeting, hey, let's pretend we do business, and when we do business, I tell you it's gonna take 6 to 8 weeks for us to remodel your kitchen, would you be okay with that? And they could have said no, and I could have said, okay, thanks. But it was all about me and my presentation and my stuff. We must understand their decision-making process. Number 6, fulfillment, the presentation. So the presentation, when we're ready to give it, here's what we understand. We've already figured out what it's gonna take to do business with them, because we know their reason to buy and reason to change. We understand their investment, and they're willing and able to part with it, so we've gotten their budget before we ever give them a piece of paper and tell them how much it's gonna cost. And the third piece here is decision. We understand exactly how they're gonna make decisions. Now we're gonna present to their pains and to their pains only. And once we've done that, and we've gotten their buy-in, right, or we haven't, we're gonna move on to post-sell. And post-sell is all about making sure that they feel good about the decision they just made. In the remodeling business, way back in the day, I remember telling my prospects, look, your windows aren't gonna be here installed for another 6 weeks. You just spent a lot of money with me. Help me understand why this was a good decision for you. Because unlike the $30,000 you might spend on a car that you just spent on windows, you can go out to your garage tonight and look at the car and smell the leather. And you can look at the shine. But you're not gonna be able to do that with your windows. And by the way, when you get to the office and you tell somebody you bought them and they say, wow, I got mine for half that much, what are you going to say to them to overcome that? So we must make sure that they're comfortable with the decisions that they've made. And so this is our process. It's a high-level overview. We're not going to go much deeper than this, and we certainly can in another session. But once we get our people operating under a sales methodology, now we've developed a culture in which we know predictability can happen. If we get all the way through this process, you should be closing at an 80% clip. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten all the way down. You would have exited at some point and said, we probably shouldn't go any further. So with that, once we've got a methodology down, the next question is, how do you effectively lead your people to attain quota? And at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Bill and invite him up.
We look at the art and science of leadership, and leadership is an art and a science, and you heard Rich talk about predictability. And the challenge of predictability is this: how many of your people believe hitting quota is a nice thing to do? How many of your people take time off after they have a good quarter? Mentally, not physically. And so when we look at effectively lead them to quota, what we find most of the time, and hopefully you don't get up and leave, you're the problem. Because we don't set the model that forces them to say, I live to sell. I don't sell to live, I live to sell. How many of your people can actually say that that's their model? Every morning when I've gotten up for the last 22 years of this business, I have looked forward to sitting in front of people and selling. I live for that moment. And yet, how many people in your life live for that moment? And how many of your people in that life live for the moment of, I need to make $1. And by the way, at a certain point I'll have made enough money, so I'm not going to tell you that. What I'm going to do is say, don't worry, I'll charge that machine gun nest with you. And guess what? They're not with you. So the model that we have is, when we look at this issue, you have to shine the light on yourselves. Here's what we know about sales. Your people, the people who work for you, fall into 20%, 60%, 20%. 20% of all salespeople are considered winners. That's it, 20%. Now, what do winners do that others don't do? They set goals, they commit to goals. They drive ambition forward. They're the people who own this life. And by the way, they're the people that you go to when the other 80% fall short. Hey, look, you know, Bob and Sally aren't gonna hit a number this month, you need to do about 30% more. And by the way, that's the number one reason that people leave your company. That's the number one reason that winners leave your company, is they're tired of being put upon and you not holding the other people accountable. So when we look at this 20% factor, do you know who the winners are in your sales organization? Because if you don't, that's a problem. Second, well, let's go to the bottom first. To be politically correct, 20% will be non-winners. They'll be winning challenged. They'll be the people who are good at one thing, and that is making excuses. They have perfected the art of excuses, why they can't do certain things. Now, by the way, they give you great lip service. And lip service means they're the ones who are asking questions, they're the ones who are engaged, but they have no intention of doing what they're talking to you about. And they start realizing as the quarter goes by, as the year goes by, their job is in jeopardy, so they have to get better at the excuses they make. And by the way, they've perfected that science. And so in this bottom 20%, they probably never get above 60% of volume. Here is the group that we call heartbreakers. These are the at-leasters. And at-leasters are variable performers. These are the people who some months have great months, some months have terrible months. And so we call it porpoising. They will rise above, they will drop below, they'll rise above. When you need them to be above, many times they're below. This 60% of variable performers have the potential to be great. Now, the challenge of this 60% is gravity. And what you have to look at is how many of these people are trying to break free from gravity with your leadership help, and how many of these people are succumbing to gravity and just giving up and going with it because it's easier. These are the people who are consistently at about 87.2% of quota. You know, they get to that mark, and you say a little more effort, you can get there, and they say, I know I'm going to do it. They have no intention of doing it. Because once they get to 100% of quota, you will expect them to be there consistently. So they are never going to do it. Now, they have the potential. You need to find out who the upper 50% of this is. That's called the soft middle of a company. Leaders have to figure out what the soft middle is, and in that soft middle, work with those people through a leadership model. Now, that's a challenge, because if we don't know who these people are, or worse than that, if we won't admit who these people are, because we know who they are, but we can look at the numbers and we can see that. But by the way, numbers alone don't dictate this 20-60-20. Behavior dictates this. They're not willing, these people are not willing to do what these people live to do. These people conditionally are willing to do what these people commit to do. So here you have unconditional commitment, here you have conditional commitment, here you have zero commitment. And when you start looking at your people, those are challenges. Now, obviously, the model that I'm going to show you in a few minutes will allow you to ferret this out. But what is this point? If I say this is fact and you don't, and you want to push back, why would you push back? One, but second, what does this tell you about leadership? What's the number one thing this tells you about leadership in general? And I suggest we have a traditional moment of silence while you process this information. Because I know what deep thought is coming. I can feel it in my bones. Good thing they're name cards, because you got about 30 seconds before someone becomes a target. John, you've been through this way too many times. What does this tell you?
Not doing enough from a leadership perspective to increase the at-leasters into the winners.
Yeah. A leader does what you said. A manager spends 80% of their time with this group trying to get them up to the bar. Stop being managers. Managers manage tasks, leaders lead thought. And so the challenge of this process is a leader would say just what you said. Who are the people in here that can go there? By the way, a manager would say, how do I get these people at least to here? Stop that thought. Time is too valuable. Time is worth more than money, because you can always make money. You can never get that time back. And these people are going to give you lip service to break your heart. Armin, you've been through this. Tell me what that tells you.
tells me we have a pool of people in the middle that we need to bring up to 20% in order for us to increase our revenue. So we need to focus in the middle and make sure the top people don't fall into 60% because we're burdening them with all the time by asking them to do more.
That's a home run. Yours is a classic industry for that, because you know who they are. Remember when we were first working together, you knew who the guys you could go to, and by the couple more machines, guess what, we're there. And so here's what we know. We look at 20, 60, 20. Typically, in any company, this is the performance bar. These people are trying to break free from gravity, these people are sucking us into hell. Now, what if the performance bar were here? Not because you lowered the bar, but because all of your people, still with a stacked ranking, were above it. How much easier is your life?
Way easier.
And that's the answer. It's incredibly easier. And what that means is, as a leader, your responsibility is for one thought: managed turnover. It's not slash and burn. It's not fire people. It's raise the bar so that they have to step up. Stop accepting mediocrity from them as a way of life. Because once you accept it, you've become the problem. And once you say, this is my success model, this is what it takes behaviorally to be successful in my company, now you've set the bar and said everybody has a chance to get above it. So your first hot sheet item for me is, what are you going to do about this? Your first hot sheet item, what is your commitment to do about this? You want our help, we'll help you for sure, but what are you going to do? Remember the concept. Managers manage tasks, leaders lead thought. How much of your time is spent thinking and how much of your time is spent doing? You are not in charge of doing, you're in charge of thinking. If you think and strategically plan for success and have the right people, you will succeed. But if you're always immersed, I remember when you and I met years ago, I was doing, and Daniel, the same thing. I was doing middle management training for Minolta. And here's what we found. The middle managers were the super closers of the company, right? Whenever a deal had to be closed, what did we send in guys like you and you, right? And said, help close. And so what did we do? We took them out of doing mode and said, your people have to do this. We as leaders have to be good enough to teach our people to do this, so you can do what you're paid to do. You know, the same thing happened at Electa when we spent the time. We worked with the middle managers. That's where the victory is won. So when you look at this, ask yourself, how much of the sales dollars that are kicking in are due to my effort as a leader? And if more than 20% is the case, you're the problem. Let's look at your people. And let's look at killer weaknesses. The killer weaknesses we test for. Now, these aren't things people come to the interview and say, guess what, I have low money tolerance, high need for approval, I can't control my emotions, I have a crappy outlook, and I'm afraid of no, but I'd like to work here.
You're hired.
That's, by the way, that's what happens. Well, okay, I think we can work with those things. Guess what? Because here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn you into superstars. So when we look at the 5 killer weaknesses, you heard Rich talk about money. When we look at the fact that most of us have been trained by our parents not to talk about money. By the way, it's wonderful when you're a child, but if you bring that into sales, your money tolerance kills you. Here's why. At a certain point, you have to determine for your salespeople what's a lot of money. Because if a lot of money for them is low, anything above that is going to be a lot of money. And so your membership fee is going to be I would never pay that, but I'm going to try and sell it to you. It's more than I would pay, but you should really do something about this. Money tolerance is a killer. That's why salespeople are always coming to you to lower price, to get a deal, because it's above their money tolerance. It's a critical killer weakness, and what we know is 87% of human beings deal with this. Not change it, deal with it. If you have it and it's hardwired, you don't have to change it or deal with it. All I'm asking you to do is make sure you know your people who struggle with this and deal with it. Build in traps that create value. I heard you say something brilliant about value and money, and I think that's brilliant. How many of your people really believe that when we think about that? How many of you people believe that price is the reason people buy from you? 7 out of 10 people will tell you money is the reason they buy from you. In reality, it's 3 out of 10. So those 4 in between, you want to grow your business, close those 4 in between who say it's about money, but really it's about something else. Need for approval. The need to be liked. How many of your salespeople have a need to be liked that's greater than their need to be effective?
Every one of them.
And you're honest about it, but anybody could say that. By the way, in your personal life, need to be liked is wonderful. It keeps us from being serial killers. But the challenge is this. The challenge is the need to be liked in sales is a huge deterrent to closing business. Because the people who have this need to be liked will never ask the tough questions for fear of being disliked. In our world, we'll never find pain because they'll believe they inflicted it. Oh, I caused this discomfort, and so I've got to stop it. Emotional composure. How many of your people are more emotionally invested in the sale than your prospects?
All of them.
Yeah, and all of them get this answer, so, right? We all of a sudden, we walk in, we look at the building, we look at the person and say, this is gonna look great on my resume to close this, right? And so I have emotionally taken ownership of that sale. In our world, here's where emotional ownership transfers. On this side, the salesperson should own it. On this side, the prospect should own it. Pain is the pivot point in selling. If you don't see emotional ownership of the sale transfer to the prospect at that point, your salesperson has prevented it from happening. And it's a major, major killer. And by the way, you should all have this emotional composure. We are emotional beings. But at a certain point, we've got to teach our people that we can't own somebody else's stuff. They've got to own it. Nick?
Bill, I would say that money tolerance, need for approval is what goes back to why they never learn the pain.
It's exactly it.
Right?
It's number one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly it. We look at those two things. If I learned the opposite of it, I'm going to have to now challenge my belief. Because these are locked in belief. And when we get to these 3, the belief is so strong that, again, we'll go back to where you took us here, a professional visitor. Professional visitors have this wonderful positive outlook that they can close anybody. Well, that's not the case. You shouldn't go into a sale believing you can close this sale. You should make them prove that they can. So that shiny, magical, I'm happy to be alive today, I couldn't wait to sell, and by the way, when I get out there, people are gonna love me. Doesn't work, because it's conditional. Now, what does work is a realistic outlook on life. And the realistic outlook is based simply in here's a realistic outlook on life. Some will, some won't, so what next? Some will buy from you. Some won't buy from you. So what? Get the next one in line. I mean, how many of you people believe that? How many of you people get locked into some will? 100% of my people believe, yep, some will. And that's the way they go after business. And that's why they get fooled by their prospects, because they're always trying to push the ball forward versus deal with it for what it is. Fear of rejection. The inability to deal with no. To deal with no. What are the results of a sales call? The first result of a sales call is no, because we get more no's than yeses. Now, I would say a qualified no is what I'm looking for as a result. Because then back to Rich's system, the challenge is I'm going to close the yeses at a much higher rate. Another result of a sales call, yes. And yes doesn't mean we're going to do business. Yes means we go forward. That's all. So this is don't go forward, this is go forward. Clear future. How about an F? A clear future. Challenge of a clear future is we can't do something with this thing. We need more information, but there's a firm path to gather that more information. And in that firm path, it is not think it over. Salesperson leaves the sales call with a think it over, they're the only one thinking it over. That prospect has made up their mind far and away, they just haven't told them, right? But yet, how many salespeople are twitching right now because we're talking about them, because they're about to go back to their manager and say, hey, we're this close. I think you're gonna like this one, we are this close. So, when we look at these big five, we test for them. We do behavioral testing. You've done it?
So can I just share?
Please.
And you guys probably know, but the person that I recently hired, you told me no, told me no. And every single thing
Yeah.
is right there.
Yeah.
And it's my fault, I've let it go on, but yeah.
It only happens once, Nick, that's the good news. Typically, we'll keep looking at that person, we think, Bartlett.
Yeah. Well, and every time I'm like, they told me, they told me, they told me, and try and lead, you can't lead someone who doesn't want to be.
No, no. And the net is, again, as I said, these don't show up in the interview. They don't sit, they learn. What do we know about salespeople? They learn to interview better than you've learned to interview them. There are 308,962 books written on snappy answers to stupid questions that they give you. And their job as salespeople is to make us fall in love with them. And by the way, if we fall in love with them, we think, well, come on, it's not that bad. We can live with it. We can work the magic with it. So, just so you know, if you're interested in figuring this out, you heard Nikki say it, write down behavioral testing, because we do behavioral testing, and it's the one thing that we really love about helping companies like yours, and that is to help you see that you can be the best interviewer in the world and you can miss things. And really, that's the case. Any thoughts about this? Nikki was very candid about it. Any thoughts from the rest of you about this? I'm sure there are.
We lose a lot, so, I mean, just, we're in a two-company world. There's two major companies that do what we do, and in the US, we're the smaller of the two by a large margin, so we lose 60 to 80% of the time. Our best salesperson wins one of every two.
Yeah.
So we have to, that no is really important for us.
Here's one that I always love about your company. What is the dollar amount of the average sale?
It's probably, I mean, if you're talking about every single thing we sell,
All in.
It's $100,000.
So you look at $100,000. Do we know how many people have $101,000 money tolerance?
No.
How many people it's 99,000? I mean, I think that's the challenge, because the ones underneath that are going to come to you and say, come on, John, I can close this if you would just
approve this.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. It's painless. Here, I'll even move your hand. And so I think that's the issue of money tolerance.
Yeah.
Anybody else with a thought? Wait.
One of my guys, he's an older guy, old school, he uses a paper calendar as per schedule.
Sure.
He won't commit to the electronic world. It's very frustrating.
Sure. Abe Lincoln took notes on the back of a shovel with chalk. We moved past that, right? So I think no judgment on your guy, but what's the challenge? Evolution either hamstrings us or drives us forward. So I think that the issue that we face here is, with guys like that, is how do we make the subtle behavioral shifts that are important?
This is beyond subtle.
We take a hammer out. Yeah,
Where does he rate as far as your team?
Last year's #1. He had a lot of help though, that's the shtick.
an honest
Be
man.
careful.
Yep.
An honest man, thank you.
Yep.
That's what happens, we become the super closers, right? And so, again, think of, without saying it out loud, think of how much time you spend helping someone like that make money, and how much time you could have done, what else you could have done with that time.
One of my 3 goals this year is to eliminate that.
There you
Take
go.
myself out, and let him do it himself, and he's failing miserably.
Which goes to your 60% above, 40%, yeah, there you go, there's one of you.
There's another problem
Do it.
too, so this year, the same guy, if you don't help him, now suddenly makes less money, but in his mind, he thinks he's worth more, so you've created a monster.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
yeah, that's a great
So
analysis.
now he's mother effing you because you're screwing him out of money, he's gonna go look at the competition and go for
Not yet, but next week his draw drops, so that'll be enough in me.
But you see that, when you say the domino effect that's going to happen, and now, what happens within the sales organization? This guy becomes not your advocate anymore, he becomes, right?
Huge
It's
amount.
cancerous.
Yeah. And so, look at the domino effect of it. You've been very candid about it, I appreciate it, but all over, companies are facing that right now. And again, I go back to, how much time did you spend early on when I met you 20 years ago, closing business for somebody else? You guys don't do that anymore, but that's the good news. Anybody else with a thought?
I have a question.
Do
So,
it.
like, so if you have somebody like that on your team, do you believe that you can invest in your time in helping that person change behaviors? Or is that more so taking up too much of your time, a waste of your time, and you should just get rid of them?
You have to, and we're gonna go there in the next slide. You have to create an environment where they have to step up. Because if you try to get them to step up, you own their success. They have to own their success. And so you have to create a coaching model that allows them to own success in small bites. You have to create traction, and in that traction, they will grow. If you don't see traction, you have to let them go and be lower performers in somebody else's company. And so I think the challenge that we have here is traction is through small goals. Someone earns your ability to work with them by achieving small goals. They have to earn the right for your time. Small goal achievement allows them to earn that right. And that's what you have to think about, because if not, you're giving your time away and there's no return on investment for it. We look at sales competency, and we look at most companies this way, and you have to ask yourself, what does your sales team look like? So when we look at these 5 steps of competency, the lowest form of selling is when your sales team acts like vendors. Vendors sell price, because, well, you know what that means. But a price. Somebody said to me the other day when I was writing on the board, you look like a stroke victim. So let's do it this way, price.
Dollar sign?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
price. That's the reason that people sell if they're vendors. They always have the best price. Now, most of an organization is typically made up of people with a vendor mentality. Next, problem solvers. Problem solvers sell because they can fix things. So they're always out there looking to fix things. They're great at finding problems, but not so much at finding the pain associated with those problems. Just looking, this is the problem, here's how we fix it. And so this is typically a feature benefit sale. If there's a problem, we are the solution. So now you start putting these two together, and what you have is typically 80% of an organization. It's typically that bottom 60 and 20 who are focused here. Now, the problem with this is why bottom lines shrink. This is why we are always in the constant need to shore up our bottom line, and that's what you have to guard against. Here, the challenge of this group up here, consultants sell because they have expertise. Expertise. Now, do your salespeople have the necessary expertise to succeed? And if the answer is yes, are they giving it away under the form of unpaid consulting? And so what we find is the most dangerous sales force is a well-trained sales force with product knowledge, because they can't wait to go out there and tell all they know. So the challenge of being a consultant in our world is making people earn your expertise. And that's what pain does. Pain allows your people to give away something through the eyes of pain, because then your prospect can appropriately understand what your features and benefits can do for them. Consulting is about expertise. Partner is about relationship. Building relationships. Now, building is the key. Here's what I want you to write down: gold, silver, or bronze. Your salespeople are charged with building gold level relationships, but what we find far too often is they're building bronze or tin level relationships. A bronze level relationship or a tin level relationship will still rely on price to close the deal. Price is going to be the #1 closer if they don't have the relationship. So you better always have the lowest price if you're not going to build relationships. Now, God forbid you have the lowest price, because you wouldn't be sitting in here. So in this challenge of your people, are they growing relationships? Or are they inappropriately presenting to lower level people, lower strength relationships, hoping that those presentations will build the relationship? They'll like me because I have resources. No. So gold, silver, bronze, and you can even write down tin below bronze if you want. Advisor. People sell as an advisor if they build trust. Trust is earned. Trust is earned, and here's the #1 way trust is earned: by asking questions that make others think. Do your salespeople ask questions that make their prospects think differently? That's where trust comes from, because then the prospect says, well, I've got to keep this person around. They obviously have asked me questions that make them smart in my eyes. And one more thing that happens, if we go back to it, those questions trigger this in the prospect. Now I want to steal their expertise, and if your salespeople are smart enough and the questions trigger this, they don't give away their expertise, they now go into pain. So just as a bridge back and forth for you to think different things. You said something?
That's good, that's a different way of looking at it.
It's the way we have to look at it, because we're triggering this in everything we do. It's how your people deal with it that's the change. Because this exists in every industry. So now, if your people are asking questions that build trust, the prospect is still thinking, I can steal their expertise because they know things. Challenge is, if your salespeople are smart enough, they don't give it away, they make them earn it. So it's the full circle on the sales and leadership process. Your job is to teach them it's okay to have product knowledge, it's not okay to give it away. When they come back from a sales call and say, I made a presentation, you should ask what happened to make them earn this presentation. What drove the fact that you did this? And if they can't talk to you about pain, money, and decision, it wasn't earned. It's not, the pain, money, and decision are the three compartments of our process that allow someone to earn your information. Reason to buy, investment, people. So here, when you look at your sales force, I said 80% of salespeople are here. Here's what the top 20% are. Top 20% are a mixture of those three things. And when you look at your salespeople, here's your job. Do you have a success profile for your top 20%ers? Do you have a success profile that lists behaviorally what they should be doing to be considered winners? And by the way, the answer for most companies is no. You should have a success profile for everybody on your team that says this is behaviorally what people need to do to be considered a winner here. And it's made up of those areas. And you know, again, those are things that if you want to talk to us later, write down success profile when you talk to us. I'll give you one more thing before we shift into leadership, and that is predictability. When Rich was talking to you about predictability, I always think of this slide. This is the slide that makes sales an equation, makes sales a science. Here's the typical process that someone goes through to become a customer. They start out as suspects. Suspects are those people who can fog a mirror. All they have is a pulse. And so anybody can be a suspect. Doesn't mean anything, but too many times salespeople fail because they start out everybody at prospect level. People have to earn the right to be a prospect. Earn the right to be a prospect. So suspects can fog a mirror. And something has to happen to a suspect for there to be the possibility of doing business. And so in our world, to go from here to here, it's bonding and rapport and upfront contract. And those are the two areas that Rich had up there before pain. So if you can build a relationship and get on the same page, there's the possibility of doing business. Now, something has to happen from a possible to become a prospect. Now, we start looking at to go from here to here, pain. Someone is only a prospect if they have pain. Stop letting your people start with prospects as the #1 qualifier in your contact management system. Doesn't work that way. You're a suspect until you get to pain. Now, let's do one more thing. At a certain point, there's a probability of doing business. Probability of business happens when we talk about money and we learn their decision process. So these two things are the next area. So look what happened. To move from prospect to probable, we have pain, money, and decision. Those say, back to Rich's point, you will have disqualified so many people from ever getting that far. Not because they're bad people, but because they can't prove the right to be there. One more thing. Let's take it from here to here. Fulfillment. The way that someone goes from a probable to customer is with a good presentation. Now, here's the key to a good presentation. It matches your core competencies to their pain. That's all. Don't worry about boilerplate garbage. Your core competencies matched to their pain. So that's where we're going to get here. Here's where it becomes a science. Let's use Rich as an example. Every month, Rich starts out with 25 suspects. That's the rule in this company. You've got to have 25 suspects in your funnel every month. And all they are people who can fog a mirror. We don't know much about them. Either they've expressed interest, we've expressed interest, something happened to put them on our radar screen. And what happens is, because we can't build a relationship or get an agenda with them, we lose 8 of them. So we're gonna lose 8, we know this. If we can't build a relationship or build a productive agenda, 8 go away. People who don't have pain, we lose another 5. And so now, if we start up here with 12, thinking 12 prospects, we're never gonna get to where we have to be. Down here, people who don't have a budget or decision, we get to 8. We lose 4 more who are looking for the lowest price training or something. And we close 6 of those 8. Now, we're not good enough to start with 12 and so close those 6. We have to go through the process of disqualifying. Sandler system, the system that we teach is a go for no system, because you're going to get more no's than yes. It's not a go for yes system. If you go for yes, you have happy ears, you'll get fooled. You go for no and eliminate those people who are never going to do business with you, here's the good news. Look at the closing rate on those people who get that far. That's why this is a science. Now, if you don't have a productive suspect funnel, write down, you should talk to us about that, because this is the science of selling.
When you go from 8 to 6, when do you lose it to?
We lose those 2 because the presentation wasn't strong enough, or because there was a competitor who they chose over us, and so realistically, we're never going to get all 8 of those, and so that's the, what is that, 6 out of 8, 80% roughly. And so we're going to lose to a competitor some of those times. I've got a good example. We've earned the right to get into the bonus round with Kraft Heinz. I know there are 2 other people in there. I don't know who they are. The potential that I could lose to them is still there. That would be one of my 2 in there as an example. Tell me about this. When you look at this, this is the science of selling. You never, ever miss a quota if you can do the science of selling. Because you always know those people who start out here with 20 are never going to get here. Those people who tell you, I got a good 15, are never going to get here. Now, this assumes a high skill set. And by the way, which it should, it assumes a high execution of process. Go ahead.
Is it those are your 20%ers that know that?
It's exactly it. How many times does a 20%er miss their quota? Rarely ever. Yet, how many of your people can tell you at the beginning of every month where they should start? And that's the major issue for us right now. But
We need to get back to that.
Yeah.
We were good at that a couple of years ago.
yeah,
And now we are so chasing our tails, just looking for the probables to customers. And again, we're at I need to say it out loud, but like a 14% close rate
Yeah.
across the company.
that's predictable too, because if you believe everything starts here, there's no way you're going to get there. And so still, how many of your deals are still hanging on the price point?
I'd say hardly any.
Good, even better. So you've not had a double whammy here, you
Yeah.
just don't have enough working.
Yeah, no, again, we took price off the table in the last 12 months.
Love it.
Somebody would experiment.
Oh, that's right.
And it didn't work the way some higher-ups thought it was gonna work. I mean, we put deals out there that the customer.
You might want to write their names down, I'll make a phone call later, I'm happy to help you know that.
I appreciate that.
So, anybody else with a thought here? Mike, tell me about predictability. Oh, that side tells me everything.
Yeah. We've had metrics for the last 4 years for the company, the division I'm running, and we've been pretty consistent up till this year. This year, the metrics are flipped upside down, and I don't know why.
Can I give you a heads up, because I was
Please.
thinking about it before. When you just measure metrics and not behavior, the metrics lie. And so, we're gonna go here in a minute. Behavior is the way companies have to run, because if behavior is the way you run your company and the metrics are an offshoot of the behavior, When business starts to slide, you can see in the top 10 behaviors why it slid, because we're doing something different. How many times does it, you said it, we used to, how many times does a salesperson say, hey, I used to do that? But no, they don't do it anymore because they're chasing metrics. Numbers lie. How many salespeople are resting on the laurel of 3 big sales to hit their quota, and they're not developing their territory?
So our company, once a month, they post the activity on reps, right? And it's funny, when I look at it, I see some of the reps that are producing the most activity, and I look at the standings at the bottom of the standings, they're nowhere to be found when it comes to the actual sales. So they're chasing metrics to make their managers think they're doing all the right things.
That's
They're not
exactly it.
contributing anything.
Being busy is not being productive.
Then the 20% are all pissed off, they're like, this is all BS.
Yeah.
This is all BS. Why even put it out there? You're demoralizing people.
And that's what happens, and so when we just look at numbers, numbers lie, and I say this to CEOs all the time, stop running your company on metrics. Use metrics as an offshoot of behavior. We have a company that shifted, Schneider is one of our larger companies. They shifted their entire focus to measure top 10 behaviors for every position, from the woman who answers the phone and greets people at the front desk to the people who sweep up at night.
So you talk about high payoff activities.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that?
High payoff activities.
Yeah.
High payoff activities?
Yeah.
Payoff.
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 Oh, payoff.
Yeah.
I was letter P, letter F.
Speak
No,
quick.
high payoff activities is what we're talking about. Can you crystallize the top 10 things that people need to be doing? Because here's what I'm gonna give them to you in a minute. But the issue is, if you can do that, you can say who's doing what within that, because every behavior then has to have a measurement, 10 high and 1 low. And what you're gonna find is the people with typically the highest issues are struggling. So but you can pinpoint what that is. Let's look at leadership. Let's put you into the mix. You know, when we look at leadership, I said you have control or you're the problem. It's going to be one or the other. Either you're going to control the result or you're going to be the problem. When we look at leadership, we look at supervision, we look at coaching, we look at mentoring, and training. These are the 4 elements of leadership. And I'm going to ask you in a minute to create a pie chart of how much time you spend in each of those areas. But let me tell you a little bit about them first. Supervision. Well, let's do it this way and we'll come back. Supervision is about assigning quotas, interpreting data, evaluating performance. Coaching is about supporting, motivating, facilitating skill execution. It's not training. Most people are in training mode when they think they're coaching. Trainer, expanding awareness, impacting knowledge, developing skill. And mentoring, creating model behaviors, setting up accepted norms, and demonstrating successful actions. Just take a look at this slide, because we're going to bounce back and forth between this one and the last one. So when you look at this, this is the leadership pie. This is how leaders who are effective spend their time. So let's go back. Oops. And have you create a pie chart now of percentage of time you spend in each area. How much time do you personally spend now in supervisory mode, in coaching mode? You don't have to be everybody's mentor, but have you built a mentoring environment